Welcome to Who's There, our continuing exploration of what is within you, your motivations, aspirations, your capabilities, and how you define rewards in your life that can inform your organization's leaders for better outcomes. Good morning, Robert. We had Rebecca Braitling on for our last episode and a great conversation with her. I think that she's got some really sound vision for how leadership ties into community at work and rewards at work and what that means to people. But I want to just get your take on what you thought was the big takeaways from our conversation with Rebecca.
Sure. I really think that her comments synchronized well with our concept of who's there from both an individual perspective and an organizational leader perspective in developing the workforce. I think what resonated for me was her own personal journey of studying the law and litigating to realizing that her purpose would be better served in getting into HR and people development to actually sidestep the problems that the law has to fix. So I think her personal story goes a long way with what we're talking about and the ideas of her work with her clients and developing leaders to recognize the importance of individuals. And it was really terrific to hear her talk about the idea that the leaders they're working with are interested in what drives people, what are their passions, and recognizing not only that, but the what drives passions for work itself and why people are motivated, whether it's to learn and grow and develop, whether it's just to make money, or whether it's to feed interests that are outside the workplace. She really grasped that. And I know you've talked a lot about it in our own conversations. One of the other takeaways was her comments about the pandemic and how it's moving us forward in areas we might not have ever imagined, particularly around trusting in people and giving them autonomy to manage their lives at home and getting their work done, which shifts away from the idea of working out of fear of not being perfect and attentive and looking the part, as she described with one of her law firms. So that's really interesting. And then also the idea of creating stability was top of mind. The idea of creating a cadence of predictable activities that brings the community of the workplace together. You'll be interested to hear about that. And ultimately around vision development being so critical to what people would want to attach in their organization and work towards, to be excited and fired up, and how she leads leaders today in developing vision. I think that will be interesting for you to hear about. So as she noted at the end, it's the more we focus on our differences, the wider those differences get. Let's work on what we are have in common and the strengths that we have in common as individuals, as groups, as societies, and as the greater good. So.
I agree. I actually almost with everything you said. For me, the quick takeaway was really just about she realized how important that human interactivity and human engagement was to her personally. It's funny to think about the law where you're really representing people and you would think there's a lot of kind of human connection, but the law takes over. Your goal in a law setting is really argument. It's sort of understanding the law and then debating the law and then, making the best case and trying to win. Obviously, there's other ways to use the law, but it really came through to me that she wants to keep human beings front and center. That's sort of an important concept to me. And the importance of leadership and vision in that work came through, and her understanding of it was really strong. So it was a great conversation. Yeah, I don't know if anything else that you want to sort of add to it before we jump in, or?
No, I'm really comfortable with that setup and anxious for our public to hear what Rebecca has to say.
Cool. Well, this is our episode with Rebecca Braitling.
I'd like to welcome our guest today, Rebecca Braitling. She is a person who's deeply interested in the development of better leaders and more positive workplaces. And we invited her to discuss our Who's There theme, which we're really excited about because we see a great parallel to the work and the discussions we're having with the work you're doing. So let me ask you, Rebecca, if you might just give a brief minute of what you are doing with UpSpiral and the origin of that, and then we can get into some of our questions for the common cause.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Greatly admire the work that you both do and really excited to be a part of this. And I'm one of the co-founders of UpSpiral Leadership. Some may know it as Inspire Work because that was our original name. But these days we've been going by UpSpiral Leadership after our trademark application got denied the week of the pandemic when the quarantine started. So we decided to quickly adapt and rename our company, which actually made a ton of sense because we are a leadership development company. And at the core of our business is the UpSpiral mindset, which is about thinking bigger, acting bolder, and collaborating better to create positive change in the world. And so everything we do is about helping people become UpSpiral leaders and start to explore how they can become more self-aware and how they can know both themselves and others better so that they can really be empowered and accountable for creating change that they desire in the world and change that's really for the better. So we deliver leadership development programs. We typically design them for fast-growing, forward-thinking companies who already see the value in investing in their people. And we both deliver, we design and deliver customized leadership development programs as well as coaching for leaders at all levels of an organization.
That's a fantastic overview, and I'm so intrigued by the evolution of your work coming from your law background and corporate law. Maybe you could just describe kind of that personal transition, because I think it all fits in with what each of us kind of aspires to move towards a better use of our energy and emotion and interests.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like when I think about my own story, I think about how, like being young, I always imagined that I would have an impact on the world. I always cared about people just in general. And I remember when I was in high school, junior year, learning about like the civil rights movement and feeling like, wow, I really want to be someone who has the courage to create change. And so I went to law school. I knew then that I wanted to go to law school. I went to law school with, as a dreamer, with the idea that I would gain this knowledge and use it for good. And I fell in love with employment law, learning about employment discrimination. And again, it went along with civil rights and learning about how, in workplaces, there's a lot of I would say adversity at times for people. And we spend so much of our time right in the workplace. So I became an employment lawyer. And I found actually pretty quickly that I did not love being a litigator. I loved the law and I loved employment law, but I felt like I was on the wrong side of things. I felt like if I had just been in the workplace, I could have prevented this from happening. And it wasn't always that it was discrimination, but there was something underlying that was causing conflict. And I felt like being proactive and creative could have a better impact if I were there in the workplace. So I transitioned my career into HR, first as a generalist for UBS Financial Services, and then I specialized in employee relations at Chubb Insurance, where I spent almost 10 years, ultimately becoming the head of employee relations there. And after Chubb got acquired by another company, ACE, I decided that I wanted to do something different. I wasn't even sure what it was, but I had something in me telling me that I was supposed to grow in a way that I hadn't yet grown. And I started doing some pro bono work with my now two partners, Poe Chu and Sue Cavelli Buntley, helping a nonprofit organization that has and helps students become leaders. They work in inner city schools across the country, helping young students come up with projects that have an impact on their community or their schools. It's called the Future Project. And I just felt like, gosh, I think this is a signal that I'm supposed to be doing something different. So I said to them, hey, what if we can start our own business? Like, what if we can have an impact beyond one company and help multiple companies create better workplaces and better leaders? And that was what started then Inspire Work in April 2016, now renamed as UpSpiral Leadership. And we're just about getting close to celebrating 5 years of being in business. And it's, go ahead.
It's hard to believe 5 years. I remember when I bumped into you in the street that time that I was excited about our attending the leadership forum, and you instantly said, wow, that may be something that I should be aware of. And we were able to bring you along as you were getting your business going. Can't believe it's been 5 years. I'm going to lead with one more question, but then I want to make sure Kurt's jumping in here too. As Kurt and I are giving a lot of consideration in some ways to two different viewpoints. One is, what does an individual aspire to and want to apply themselves, and what gets them jazzed up about the rewards in their life, and maybe not just in the workplace, but then also what does the corporate organizational leaders need to know and look differently at in terms of their workforce and what's in there. So that's the theme of who's there from two different perspectives. I laid out four kind of proposition questions in our email invitation. I'll just cite one of those and we can go from there. But the idea from my view is, does every individual have that inner flame that we can help fan into some fiery passion through their workplace? So we can try that connection. How do you react to that?
I would say that every individual has a fiery flame inside of them. They may not all know it, and they may not have discovered it yet, but it does exist. I do believe that each of us has an inner flame that either has been ignited or has yet to be ignited. And for some of us, if we're lucky enough, that passion and that fire is found through our work. But what I learned is that that's not true for everyone. And it's interesting. I've been so fortunate to be someone where I put so much of myself into my work, and I truly love it. When I'm doing what I love, it doesn't feel like work. And I'm super curious about leadership and about learning and about how people work together. So I've been very fortunate to have that passion connected to my work. But I was talking to a close friend of mine one time, and she said, you know what? That's not true for everyone. You're lucky that you have that, but that's not true for everyone. She said, my passion is outside of work, but work gives me the means to be able to fulfill my passion outside of work. And that gave me a really different lens. I was really happy to learn a different perspective. It opened my perspective. And I think that from a reward standpoint, it's really important as an organizational leader to understand what's important to your employees and to understand what motivates them, because we're all unique, and what motivates each of us is something different. So I think that's important.
I'm going to jump in. I think you said so much that I really connect with. Particularly, Robert's heard me say often, a lot of people go to work to fund their lives outside of work. Very quickly, two areas where I think we might be able to have those individuals support the business as well as the business supporting them is, I think businesses are in the best spot to understand what really motivates individuals. I don't think the government is able to do it. I don't think government can regulate it. I don't think universities and certifications will be able to kind of reach that point the way a business can, where somebody goes every day and spends so much of their life. I also believe that even people that I was a musician for a long time, so I would work to make money so I could dump it into a hole, which was called a band. And I always felt like, man, if the company was aware of this, if they needed music or if they needed creative work, I might be able to help them, but it would also give me an outlet at work to make me happier. Is there work you're doing or work that you're seeing where companies are moving in that direction to really sort of understand that better and leverage those kind of external motivations?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that what I'm seeing companies doing now, first of all, is having more conversations with their employees. So a lot of the work that we do in investing in, leadership development is learning how to uncover what motivates your employees. So I think that's the first part. And it's amazing, like as simple as it is to just have a conversation with someone and say, hey, what are you interested in? What motivates you? Where do you get your energy from? Whether inside or outside of work, I think that a lot of people really struggle with that because they're so focused on just getting the work done that they don't connect with the human and look at the person holistically. And I think that one of the silver linings of this pandemic is that it's allowed us to see people like more as humans, like seeing into their homes, like seeing, like I'm looking at your wall right now, Kurt, and I get some clues about, what's of interest to you. And so I think that it allows us to see people as not just workers or as colleagues, but as whole humans. And I think that the more that we can connect on a deeper level, the greater we're going to be able to get inside each other's minds and know what motivates each other. So we do a lot of work around that. And for my clients, they see the value of that. So they invest in developing their leaders to truly understand how they can lead better and discover those motivations. I think from like a reward standpoint, you could call that a reward because people do value learning and they're always striving. I see a commonality that people strive to grow and to better themselves and want to feel like they're having an impact. So I always say like what I've seen in my experience is that people want to be valued. They want to know that what they're doing matters. They want to feel inspired. So they want to see progress or like hope for the better future. And they want to feel connected. They want to feel like, I belong and that someone cares for me and that they care for other people. And I think that is really critical. But I'm also seeing like a greater appreciation for flexibility and autonomy. Another silver lining through this pandemic is I did a study actually through the Leadership Forum community where we all met, and it was about leading during COVID. And one of the biggest things that we found was a lot of companies who previously thought that allowing employees to work from home would do, disasters to their business have found that it has actually resulted in much greater productivity, much greater engagement. And a lot of it is not just working from home, but trusting people to make decisions about how and where they're going to work. And instead of leading with fear about what could happen, they're leading with trust. And that has really transformed a lot of people's mindsets and their actions. And it's had a tremendous impact, they've said, on both the bottom line, but also just on people's happinesses. Like this, sometimes we don't realize what people are going through in the hard times, whether during COVID or before. I mean, everyone has their own story. And I think that trusting people and giving them the autonomy to make choices that are, that balance both what's needed for the business, but also what's needed for the human, the individual, is what I've been seeing has been the greatest benefit and is having the greatest outcomes.
Yeah, and again, I really like that. I will just quickly follow up. For me, there's any relationship in our life benefits greatly from stability. That's whether it's a spouse, friends, siblings, or employer and employee, that the longer you can actually, the more, have that stability, strengthen that stability, there's such great outcomes both for the individual and for the corporation over time. And to that end, if somebody says, look, I just work because I love knitting and I go and I buy fancy threads and I knit every Saturday and that's what I love to do, having that insight into somebody, I think, tells you more about knitting. You might say, well, knitting doesn't mean anything to Microsoft, but it shows that this person is very detail oriented, able to follow instructions, able to kind of take complex patterns and work them out and actually put them into real life, right? Put them out into the ether. And I think that's so important, understanding those skills, but also the interests and the motivations. And so to that end, I mean, stability has really been a challenge, I think, particularly in COVID. It's become a huge deal, people worrying about jobs and everything else. What are you seeing companies doing to try to foster that and to, really kind of push that forward and leverage it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I learned through that research that we did was having a cadence of predictable meetings where people could connect. Just the simplicity of knowing that that was going to happen. And for some, it's meetings for their whole company. For some, it's just team meetings. For some, it's like that morning huddle, that 15 morning huddle. I mean, for my own team at UpSpiral, we do that every day. We meet for 30 minutes every morning, and that huddle just boosts, our energy and helps us have that stability that makes us, again, feel valued, inspired, and connected. We each contribute, even if it's like, what's your energy today? How are you doing today? What do we have on our plates for the week or today? Whatever it is, it's that stability, that continuity, it's the connection. And it also, again, is about kind of focusing on the progress. What have we done? And even celebrating successes. I think that that's important as well. Is just to have that continuity of celebrating successes. And even through like process as well, I see some companies that have like not just with regard to meetings, but they have like a cadence of process that creates that stability as well. I think from a reward standpoint, there's having certain rewards in place lets people know like they have time off, that's not getting taken away. That gives stability as well. I've heard that encouraging people to take that is really important, and the care. Some of the stories I heard were about leaders just saying like, it's okay. Like just telling people it's okay. Like I have your back. And if you need time off because I'm worried, I want you to be okay. And I see you're working hard and I know you're juggling your family and work, like take the afternoon off. Like that actually gives them a sense of stability because they got the approval or permission to know that it's okay. Even just I was just on a call just yesterday. We were doing a leadership program for a law firm, and coming from the legal field, there's a lot of expectations about, being perfect and perfectionism. And, you have to look the part and you have to present a certain way and follow the rules. And this law firm, being one of our clients, is very forward thinking and progressive. And they were talking about how much they embrace the chaos and they embrace seeing people's human, their lives and not worrying about whether the kids are in the background or the dog is barking. And I think that gives people a sense of stability too, because they don't have to fear being who they are.
Rebecca, you referred to rewards a few times, total rewards, rewardification, and a lot of the corporate viewpoint on rewards is the concrete parts that come with compensation and pay and time off. Sometimes it may actually be narrower than we might wish because it's sort of dropped into that comp and benefits silo. And you mentioned that the learning is something people feel reward from when they can correlate that with reward. Talk to me about your view of that term, rewards, total rewards, in maybe a broader sense. And do you think organizations and companies are willing to address it in a broader sense, that it isn't just about those concrete parts, but maybe more about what's rewarding in full in their workforce's lives, in and out of the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, a big part of our business at UpSpiral, I might have mentioned this before, was just thinking bigger. So we're always challenging ourselves and challenging others to think bigger. So when you think about rewards, I think, and we talk about this with career growth, a lot of people believe career growth is just, a series of positions. Like, what position am I going to get next? But we try to help them think bigger, that your growth isn't necessarily a position. It's what you do. It's what you learn. It's opportunities you get. They don't necessarily have to be outside of your role. They could be within your role, or they could be, volunteer opportunities. So I think that, like that with career, trying to think bigger about career growth, I think with rewards, I think defining it beyond just compensation and what benefits you're getting, like medical insurance or, 401k. I think that would be beneficial to help us all think bigger, and also to focus on, what is it that motivates us? I'm working with a client right now where they've got about 50 employees, and they're in the process of, they're about 5 years old. And as they're growing, they're trying to think about, how do we best invest our money so that we could be retaining our talent, attracting our talent. And so we're talking about, like, what is it that employees value? And we're finding that it's what they value is different. You have some people who are like, I just really want to have learning opportunities. I want to be able to, like, take a week off and just be able to write a course. I just heard this exact request the other day. I want a week off so I can write an online course. I have another person who is like, I want to be able to speak at conferences and have the time to work on a podcast. There's another person who's like, I just really want to be able to make as much money as I want to. So for that person, it was money. And so I think that every person's motivation is really different. And I also think it depends on where you are in your life. Like, when I think about when I was younger, prior to having kids, my needs were different. Then when I became a parent, like for me now, I'm really clear about setting boundaries around my time so that I can prioritize my family. That was not easy for me to do for a long time, because I am so passionate about work. And I love it, and it doesn't feel like work. I could get really carried away, but I, especially during this pandemic, realized how much I prioritize my family and how important it is to set boundaries. So for me, workplace flexibility is really key. So I think it just depends on every person, and like having the opportunity to, I have a beach house. So for me, having the opportunity to work from my beach house in the summer, we moved down there in the summer. It's great because for my husband, it's closer to work. And that's a reward. Like, that is a reward, just getting to do that. I'm still working as many hours, but I get to do it from there. And, it's really a reward for me. So I do agree. Like, we do have to think bigger about what rewards are. And sometimes they're like the simplest things that don't even cost that much money that motivate people. It's amazing.
Well, I know, Kurt, a lot of your work is, one of your projects is around facilitating that process of organizational leaders understanding their people. Maybe you could tie together that theme.
Yeah, that's, I was just going there, Robert, this has all come back to, I think, the point, maybe, I don't remember if we started with it or as early on, but the conversation.
Yep.
So what leads to stability and what leads to contentment, maybe even not happiness, is understanding someone. If you're, I don't know you well enough to say if you would enjoy this or not, but for most women, if their husband went out and for Christmas got them a vacuum cleaner, that would not be considered a gift that shows that the husband actually knows the wife very well. And I believe that's the same with employers and employees. Again, it's a synchronous relationship, or it should be. And so you talked about the conversation, some of the work you're doing. I'm curious, tools in the market. I mean, what strikes me, I've worked long enough now, for better or worse, to see lots and lots of bad implementations of personal development and personal growth and things of that nature at companies. But I think the most important thing is to have that conversation, be able to capture the information. But then what's really important is to be able to track it, right? Track the progress. How are they doing, and how does that work? So are there processes or tools that you're seeing, you're utilizing, you see in the market that are helping with that?
I would have to say no. Like, I think that is a great idea. I think that's a huge need. I think that um, teaching people how to have that conversation and then having the tools and technology to support that, and as you said, track it and store it, is a fantastic job. I have not seen that, other than maybe someone writes something on a notebook and who knows where it goes. But I think that's a fabulous idea.
And then towards that, is there, you talked about best investing money. So one of the other things that I've found is at the leadership level, to understand best investing your money, it's not just about your workforce or the people, but that vision. And I often find, I don't want to say all the time, but I've found, as much as I've not found, that a lot of leadership has not had clear vision. And I kind of think that's leadership's job. And so what's some of the work you do to, suss that out and try to help them along that path so they can better invest the money?
Yeah, I love that. So, we do a lot of work around helping our clients at the highest levels, actually at all levels, really figure out what their vision is. But when we're working with a company, a lot of times it has to start at the top to really know what your vision is so that you can inspire, right? You can inspire and rally people around that common vision and motivate them. And we find a lot of times that either the vision isn't clear or there's just not alignment around it. And so we do work with our clients, some really fun activities actually that my partners, I have to give them all the credit, Poe and Sue, developed this process to help clients come up with a vision. Even they had recently done it with a board of directors of a pharmaceutical company, and it's using visualization, like visual cards. And they actually worked with the board to collect each of their sort of storyboards of their vision, and then they combined it together. And speaking of discussion, then they actually brought them together so they could each share their story and their vision together. And it was brilliant. They loved it. But it allowed them to, one, be able to share their individual stories and their visions, and then to come together collectively to say, okay, now that we've been each able to share, how can we come together and collectively create this vision? A vision that's compelling for the future. And I think that's so important, especially because we're living in a world that is just changing so rapidly. Going back to stability, we need that vision, that common vision to hold on to. And when we don't have it, it causes us to be fearful. So we need something to hold on to be hopeful. So we do a lot of work around vision at different levels. We talk at the Leadership Forum community about this SOGI. I don't know if you guys remember the SOGI method: individual, group, organization, society, right? So as individuals, we each need to have an individual vision for what we want in our lives. So sometimes I try to do it every year. I haven't done it this year yet, but I'll create a vision board. And it's amazing that if you actually create or write down your vision, if you write it down, and it's amazing how it manifests itself. It has come true for me like every single year. Every time I list out what I want or I draw pictures, I do it with my family too. We have a family vision board, and we put on the vision board the things that we want to have, like experiences that we want to have or things we want to do, and how it comes true, because we can visualize it. We can see it. We can commit to it and figure out how to make it happen. So if we can do that as individuals, then as teams, if a team can kind of identify what their vision is, and then as an organization, if an organization can identify their vision, and gosh, I would love if as a society and a country, we created a vision, or community creates a vision. It's amazing what you can accomplish when everyone is rallied around that common vision. And I would say also common values.
I'll just say quick, just to tie that off, that it's funny. That's one of the things I really feel that is the biggest challenge right now in our country. People talk about political parties and views, but we don't have that common vision that we're all rallied around, and that's a massive challenge. I don't know what it is, so I'm hoping.
Well, I think that's it, right? I think it's leadership. I think we lack the leadership to create a common vision, and then of course you have to then if you create a common vision at the top, you have to then do things in smaller groups to be able to implement that and to be able to, refine it and figure out ways that you can get people's buy-in so that they can interpret it in a way that applies to who they are. But I believe it's possible. I really do. I believe it's possible. And what we focus on gets bigger. So the more we focus on our differences, the bigger that's going to get. Just that's going to create more division. I think we've done that a lot. We focus on our differences, but the more we can focus on our strengths and what we have in common, the more that we can start to move towards that. We can manifest that through focusing on what's possible and not what's not possible. And that's the UpSpiral. The UpSpiral is about really thinking bigger. How can we think bigger, act bolder, and collaborate better to create positive change?
Well, Kurt, I think that's a great wrap. What Rebecca just described, and it really links so well with our theme of who's there, where as we wish to understand who's around us and how we can work in ways together or in unison through organizational leadership and for personal leadership, we would hope to get better outcomes. So I'd like to thank you very much, Rebecca, for participating with us today. I don't know if you had any last thoughts, Kurt.
No, this was actually an amazing conversation. I'm so glad you joined us. I loved a lot of the thoughts, your work you're doing. If I can help you out as you go in any way, let me know. And yeah, I mean, I think if is there places people should go to find you, things you want people to know, what do you want to share with the handful of folks who may actually end up watching this?
Well, we have a podcast that we started. We first published in September. So first of all, congratulations on starting it, because I know that it's just about starting it and getting it done. But yes, you can find me on UpSpiralLeadership.com. We also have a podcast called UpSpiral Leadership. So you can listen in on our podcast where we share stories of people who are UpSpiral leaders, as well as on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Rebecca Braitling. There's another Rebecca Braitling that's a famous equestrian. I am not her. But this is a pleasure. And I would say, yes, I will take you up on that offer, Kurt, because I would love to learn about your technology and the tools that you're creating and partner with you. And that really goes again to UpSpiral. It's about collaborating. Everything we do is about collaborating with people who believe what we believe and who care about the same things. And that's what I love about the Leadership Forum community. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this, if you're not a member already, to join. It's a community of people who care about inspiring meaningful change and who work together to do that. So I think this is wonderful that the two of you connected, and I would love to support you in any way I can and certainly collaborate with you as well. So thank you. Thank you for having me as a guest.
All right. So Rebecca, we'll see you around the corner.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.